Press coverage with Glen Suitor, the traveling Glen Suitor. It's brought to you by Bronco Plumbing and Heating. Professional services guaranteed. They're going to treat you right at 781-2090. Bronco Plumbing and Heating. All right, Glen. This was the week. This was the interesting, the probably emotional week. You currently are in Normandy, in the Normandy area of France?
Yes. For the last 4 days, been here in Normandy. In fact, it's dark here at this time, of course, because we're about, I think, 8 or 9 hours different. But right behind me through this window over my shoulder is Juno Beach, where the Canadians landed on June 6, 1944. So we've been here 4 days. It has been emotional. You know, a few things that jump out is just the emotion of it, visiting the Canadian cemetery, and where over 2,044 soldiers are buried. And in the Canadian cemetery, you can walk up and down and look at the names, look at the ages. And it is quite emotional. I mean, when you see messages from parents that are saying goodbye to their kids, the average age, because their ages are on the tombstones, and the average age is anywhere between 19 and 25. Very few of them over 25 years old. I saw one his name, I believe, was H.A. Harris, and he was a member of the Regina Rifles, and age 20. And there is, if you're watching the stream, his tombstone at the Canadian cemetery, one of two Canadian cemeteries here at Normandy Beach, and not far from Juno. So on the message is a message from his parents. And, you know, when you walk up and down, and we spend hours at this cemetery, just reading the messages, reading the names, and seeing the ages. And the ages is what really moves you. I think when you see these kids that were fighting for our freedom and paying the ultimate sacrifice, and you see that they're 20 years old and their mom and dad are leaving them a message, that just, it's heartbreaking, and it gives you immediate perspective. The other thing that jumped out, though, guys, and it's that what can be accomplished when countries unite for the better good. Because, you know, we spent some time going through the U.S. cemetery as well at Omaha Beach. And when you look at the sheer numbers, you can't see the names at Omaha. It's all fenced off, but you can walk right beside it and around it and the cemetery. And when you look at the sheer numbers, we're talking over 9,000 buried in that cemetery at Omaha. And you know, you just start to think about that sacrifice and the age group, and that these parents are saying goodbye to them and fighting for, you know, our freedom. And when you look at what's going on in the news, I don't want to get political or anything, but it doesn't really matter what party you're on. If it were up to me, I would have every politician come to this place, go to those cemeteries, so that they understand the responsibility they have when they're negotiating trade agreements and things like that there's a perspective that can be gained here immediately when you walk down those paths around those, those tombstones of the Canadian and all the Allies cemeteries here. And there's also all the museums that show you all the different types of weapons, and you can walk through in here. This is a tank, if you're watching the stream from the U.S. Army. And if you can actually walk through some of the German strongholds and all the fortifications that they built here in Normandy to defend this coast, that were broken down pretty quickly by the Juno group and the Canadians on Juno Beach. It's a surreal, and it's just emotional. That's Juno Beach, and that is right behind where I'm sitting right now, and that's the beach. And they would have, on June 6th at about 6:30 in the morning, and we went out there at 6:30 just to see what they'd see. they were hitting that beach at low tide, and that is low tide right now in that picture. And, one of the great stops too, guys, and stop me if I'm getting too far into this, but it's been just an amazing 4 days. We stopped at Canada House, and Canada House is on Juno Beach, and it is one of the first houses and sort of areas in Europe that were liberated. And it was the Canadians that hit that beach, fought off, big, huge attack and very dangerous attack from the Germans, and took the house and liberated. That was one of the first areas in Europe that was liberated, the first houses that were liberated. And we went and took a look at it. I took that picture on the left, and right across from there is a little coffee shop. And we walk into this coffee shop, and there's a French girl that couldn't have been more than 25 years old. And we try to order our coffee. My French from grade 8, awful. My buddy that I'm traveling with, really good at Italian, awful at French. We're both trying to kick it around a little bit, but this girl who's probably 23, 24 years old, we're trying to figure out what we're ordering, and then we say we're from Canada, and immediately, like has happened a bunch of times here at Normandy, they first of all immediately thank you. And the thought that the 25-year-old kid, I could see it if it was someone a lot older that was here at that time or shortly after in the next generation behind, but a really young person that is still thanking Canadians for their sacrifice back then for liberating this area and pushed as far as they did. And she just lit up when she heard that we were Canadians, and she was giving us posters, and she said, here's the coffee, keep the coffee cups, just couldn't be happier to see Canadians. I've never been more proud to be Canadian than to be here for 4 days.
Sus, I was going to ask you this. My father is a big World War I and World War II historian, has hundreds of books that he's read and continues to read. He went and did that trip with his brother, my uncle, a number of years ago, probably a little over a decade ago. And he just said from reading everything and having the knowledge and the history and then to actually being there, gave him almost like goosebumps. It just was a completely different thing than reading about it, knowing about it, but then reading about it, knowing about it, and then standing there.
It really is. It's hard to explain. It's hard to put words to it, but it really is. It just sort of, even to see the sheer numbers of headstones in the cemeteries. I mean, the U.S. one, to see well over 9,000, 2,044 in the Canadian cemetery, one of 2 cemeteries here at Normandy. And you just, it's hard to wrap your head around. And then when you see the ages and you start to think, standing on the beach here thinking, these kids were 19, 20, 23 years old. And, they're moving forward, fighting for our freedom. That's why I really think politicians should come here, and before they go into any G7 negotiation or anything, they should go to these grave sites and get a real perspective, because it does move you big time.
Okay, couple of quick ones on this I want to ask. Someone's going to go. How many days do you recommend to do the beaches and where you're at?
Yeah, great question, because we've been here for 4. We go to London tomorrow, and it wasn't enough. I would say at least 7 to 10. And take your time. There's museums that we haven't seen that we drove by. I might even do, if you could, 2 weeks here. Wow. It's beautiful, by the way. It really is beautiful. I mean, some of the scenery and the beaches are beautiful. I mean, there's beach and stuff to do for kids here too, if you're doing that. But I would say 2 weeks for sure to just basically get to the museums that you want to see, and all the different places. I mean, we went to Pointe du Hoc. It's about 60 kilometers from Juno Beach to Omaha Beach, and then Utah is even farther. And I strongly recommend that anyone coming here goes to Utah Beach too, because a lot of the memorials and statues, and you will actually see real landing craft that they used when those doors opened up and they had to hit the beach. And you also get a sense of how far they had to get to cover. I mean, I think, Derek, this is what your dad was saying when he went to see it, is you stand out there and think there's probably 1,000 yards that where that boat opened that they had to get to under heavy fire, and just massive cannons and things like that were hitting. I mean, the Germans fortified this Atlantic wall in a big, big way. And so it was, I mean, courage, that's the definition of courage. And it just is, I don't know. It's hard to put words to it, guys. It really is.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're heading north to London and then into Scotland, which will be fun. I'm sure pints will be had. Are you taking any more football on this trip? Are you doing any football stuff in the UK?
Yeah, I'm trying to. There's like 1,000 teams that are playing here in Europe, so I'm trying to get set up with different PR people in both stops. But the first priority, because of what we've seen here in Normandy, is now to get to London and go and see Winston Churchill's bunker. And we want to have dinner where, during the bombings, when Germany was bombing England and London, in the raids, that he had a restaurant. He would go up on the roof of that restaurant and watch where they were bombing, and then he would go and visit those neighborhoods, and encourage those people that they're going to keep fighting back. We want to go through all that, and then when we get to Scotland, try to walk where William Wallace and Robert the Bruce walked when they were trying to liberate their country, and go to the Stirling Bridge and things like that. So it is quite a walk through history, is what it is, through these countries. But London is up next.
And then up to Scotland. Kay, I got to ask you. You've been over there. I don't know how dialed in and on the grid, as the kids say. Or what do you guys call it these days, Curtis? Following social media and stuff like that. Have you seen the pictures of AJ Ouellette's new body and down to 200 pounds from 225?
I have not, but if I know AJ sets his mind to something, he's going to get it done.
Yeah, Curtis is going to throw it up here. So this is before the 9-week challenge at his gymnasium. Him and his buddies kind of went into a competition, Glenn. So 9 weeks later, we have down 25 LBS, and then that's what we look like there. Wow. That's crazy. Yes. You haven't seen these yet. That's an instant reaction. Yeah, no, I don't. We were talking yesterday with Darian, now what's the plan of attack here before May and before June in season? Do you put on 10? Do you play it that way? Like Darian said, now he'll be more shifty and possibly, but I'm like, I don't know. Is that the guy we want? I think we want the big battering ram. So I wonder where the body goes from there.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have to, unless he's been there before, and I'm sure he has, probably when he first started. He knows how to handle it, so that will be one thing. But yeah, it's a different beast, because he will be quicker on his feet. Obviously, losing that weight is going to make him quicker on his feet. Flat out running speed may change, may improve, not necessarily because of the weight, but because of more power. It looks like he's put on some muscle there too. So, the question is, though, because he's got less body fat now, he's going to have to keep himself hydrated all the time. He's got to make sure he doesn't get cramps in games, and you want to make sure that you've got that balance of nutrition and all that. But nowadays, back in the day, we used to try and figure this out through guys that we through guys telling us, other teams telling us, other players that that you work out with, saying, hey, you should be running banks, or watching those videos from guys working out. We didn't have trainers and nutritionalists and things like that to train us. So he'll have lots of advice on how to handle his new body.
Yeah, you went to where was it? The Scoop? Where? Cayman Islands. That's where you. Yeah, you took your Hal Johnson and Joanne McLeod tapes and went there and trained. Stuck to a somewhat strict diet, I'm sure. The other thing, Riders. So we just got news here again this afternoon that the Riders signed another defensive back, Leon Jones. Leon Jones signed with the Bears, undrafted free agent. Went to the main camp as a rookie in 2024. And then yesterday they signed defensive back Mark Webb, who had a cup of coffee with the Los Angeles Chargers. So what do you make about the Riders and Jeremy O'Day going out, and the scouting staff and the coaching staff, and finding these defensive backs? Both are 6'1", around 200 pounds, with some NFL experience.
Well, it's always, when you get the NFL experience, you've got a chance. The guy knows how to be a pro. The only question that you have, I think, with guys that have the NFL background is, are they going to be all in and committed? Sometimes it's subconscious. I mean, you're not even think that they're doing it, but they show up. And I saw it many times. I've seen it as, watching and covering the game, where a guy who's even a Pro Bowler down south comes up, and they just think by showing up it's enough, and it's not enough. They have to give us their best like they did down there, and if they don't, they will be cut. So it's great, and the size is excellent. That if you got guys that have got good reach and good size that can run and can cover, the other transition they have to make, as you guys know, is the motion, is the unlimited motion. Not necessarily for DBs yard off the ball, but unlimited motion where all 4 or 5 or 6 receivers can be running at the line of scrimmage on the snap of the ball, and they can all be crisscrossing behind the line of scrimmage. That takes a bit to get figured out. So that's what they got to figure out. But the thing that Jeremy O'Day knows is that they're pros. They know how to be pros. They know how to take care of themselves. Isn't going to be a huge jump that way because they've been in the NFL.
We obviously have to wait and see if these prospect suits turn into anything, because, obviously, teams sign these guys. They have a great resume. They send out these press releases, and they sound like, wow, they were one of the best players in that conference or wherever they were in the States. And then they come up here, and as you mentioned, it just doesn't seem to work out. But it seems that I wouldn't say that there's extra focus on the defense, but let's just say with some of these signings and some of what we visualize in our minds of what the defense can be, it seems to me that I get more and more excited about the Riders' defense as we get closer to another season.
And I'm not surprised. I think it's a good thing, first of all, that Jeremy O'Day and the staff is looking to strengthen their defense. And if you look at the Grey Cup champions, Toronto, keep going back, and Winnipeg through their Grey Cup appearances, which teams in the league have had the best defenses, that usually translates into getting them to the Grey Cup, and most of the time the best defense in that game wins. And that Grey Cup in Vancouver last year was a one-possession game until the Argo defense picked the ball off twice in the fourth quarter. So that game was still up for grabs for both teams going into the fourth quarter, and then the fourth quarter, the Argo defense stepped up and made some plays. But that defense is the reason they won back in Regina as well. And Enoch Mwamba made that interception in a key moment. So, I've always said, and I looked at the Super Bowl the same way, guys, is that I would never bet against the best defense on the field in the championships or in the playoffs, in championship games or playoffs. And I think that's probably why Jeremy O'Day and the coaching staff are looking at strengthening that defense. Starts up front. I always have said that a better defensive line trumps a better secondary. If you had to pick one and you wanted to be strong in one area and couldn't be in the other, then I would pick that D line, because it's hard to complete a pass when you're lying on your back. But those are the plays, if you're watching the stream, those are the plays that were made deep into that game. It was a one-possession game going into late into that game, and that Argo defense took over. So, yeah, I think you live and learn, right? You watch the other teams, you got to steal stuff from them and build the best defense you can.
All right. Get ready for some Tenants. I remember that being a really good cerveza in Scotland, and enjoy that Churchill and just everything that London offers. Man, that's such a cool city. And then in Edinburgh, the Royal Mile. Yeah. You'll have some fun there. That castle's legit too. So spend a lot of time there. Yeah.
Can't wait, guys.
Bidwell ran a marathon there once, wasn't it?
I did, yes, yeah, and yeah, and I didn't
train.
I didn't challenge for the title. I finished.
So you didn't look like AJ Ouellette? Is that what you're saying at that point?
No, I never have. No, I never have. No, not the muscle. That's how I look like him in his before picture, especially there where he's kind of looking down and sticking out his belly. That kind of looks more like me when I ran the marathon. And when I say run the marathon, it was a run-walk of the marathon, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Speed walk guy. I like it. All right, Glenn. Thanks so much. Let's catch up on Thursday. We'll see where you're at. Traveling Glen Suitor show. I love it.
Thanks, gentlemen. Take care.
Press coverage, Glen Suitor. It's brought to you by the Bronco Plumbing and Heating team, where professional service is guaranteed. They're going to treat you right. 781-2090 to reach Bronco Plumbing and Heating. Let's go for a quick break time. It is the Sports Cage, streaming at sportscage.com and on the home of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, 620 CKRM.